The one thing that gives me the biggest ick in the music industry are new producers that are trying to sell merch before they even have an audience. And I feel really bad for a lot of these people that end up doing this and wasting so much money and time trying to facilitate this whole process. And I'm gonna run through why this doesn't work and some of the signs you need to look for to know when you're actually ready to do something like that. Now, what I want to talk about first is building community. Because if you don't have a community, it's hard to actually build trust in your audience and to give them a reason to actually invest into the brand and into you. Because if there's no actual connection between you and the audience, you're just somebody that's releasing music. It's like a bland slate. So in order to actually build a community, what we need to do is start providing as much value as possible to an audience. That can be as anything as such as just engaging with them, finding ways to find common ground, giving off a personal brand as well. And it's something that so many people overlook. They just post the exact same content strategy as everybody else, artwork, visuals, show footage, unreleased IDs, and it's all fine and everything. But if you're posting the exact same stuff as everybody else, then it's going to be very hard to convince anybody to follow you if somebody else they're following is doing the exact same thing. There's no uniqueness. And that's why personal brand is really important, because that's what's going to really separate you from everybody else. Now, with monetizing the brand, what you really need to look out for, first of all, is seeing your audience actually giving you suggestions and asking for other things outside of your music. If they're engaging with you in different kinds of ways and interacting in a way that shows that there's more to what this engagement is than just them putting down comments about your music. Let's say, for example, somebody sends you some fan artwork, or maybe they send you some kind of request for you to do a certain type of thing, or they're telling you how they really loved a specific piece of content of yours and they're sending you this over the DMs. This is when the community actually starts developing and evolving more. And you need to really tap into that, because that's giving you clues of what you can really build upon. So let's say you did an Instagram story and you said a specific joke on there, or you did like a skit or something like that, and it had a really good response, and lots of people were messaging specific parts about that. Those are things you really need to analyze and take into consideration, because that's what is actually developing here. It's the community. And this is why personal branding is so important, because that's what bridges the gap between the audience and you, rather than just the artistic side. So once you kind of have a personal brand going and you've got sense of community building, now that's when you can start moving more towards developing things like a Patreon and doing educational content. Maybe you've got like a YouTube channel and you're putting out content there, and maybe you've got a Discord. So these are examples of community building. Like this is like the first step before you monetize the brand, because you need to have a place for all your like hardcore fan base to really be, so then you can engage with them on a more deeper level, like giving them the access to a different side of your social media that not everybody has access to. That already creates a new bridging gap between them. So for example, you might see a lot of artists where they have a specific Facebook group that is just tailored to the more hardcore fans, and they might have a Discord server for the same reasons as well. Once you've built these things up and you're doing this over a very consistent amount of time, and I don't mean, you post it and then you get a couple of hundred people in there, but then after a couple of weeks, you start posting about merch. That's still too soon. We want to wait months at a time. We want to keep building and building and building upon these communities until we get to a point where the engagement is a lot more organic and you're noticing that it's overflowing into the other social media platforms. So for example, when I actually built my brand initially, and I was focusing really heavily on the Droid-based branding that I had a Droid Nation Facebook group, and then I had a Droid Nation Discord server. And so I was building a lot of educational content for the Discord server, and then I was also funneling it into my Facebook group by providing value there and giving updates about my YouTube channel, where I was posting tutorials and competitions and everything like that. And giving this kind of interactive side of things, it's really what's going to build that community, because you're not posting the exact same stuff that you'd be posting on your Instagram or your Twitter or your Facebook. Right? So using these platforms just specifically for community building content. Now, once these things have actually been built out over an extended period of time and you're starting to see an overlap between those other community building platforms and your social media is kind of getting entwined with it, and people are engaging more so because they're from those communities, that's when you should start thinking about monetizing the brand. So for example, if you've got a Patreon, you can start funneling people into that. People who are more aligned with like the educational side of content, you can put that in there. Or maybe you can start giving out services, like maybe you want to start doing mixing and mastering for clients, or maybe that you want to sell merch even. As for merch, I don't recommend doing it until you feel like you're at a place where not only you've got like a good social media presence and there's a lot of organic engagement happening, and you're also playing shows, because that really helps out with getting it out organically as well, like giving people a reason to kind of wear it if you're, touring at a specific location. Now here in Australia, there's a bit of a disconnect between a lot of the events and shows because there's not very many per state. So you often have to like go from like Perth to Sydney to Brisbane just to play like a bunch of shows. While in America, there's so many damn cities and different venues that you can continuously be playing multiple ones per week and over again, right? And there's a lot more accessibility in terms of getting merch out and then selling it more effectively in a in-person situation. So if you're somebody that is in a location where there's plenty of different venues and you're playing your own shows, like co-headlines or headlines or even direct support, if you're at that more advanced stage and you actually have that abundance of fan base audience and then there's like a cult-like following community, then sure, invest into merch. But keep in mind that if you don't have these things in place, you're going to lose money. I can guarantee it. A lot of times people try and test the boundaries of how far their audience has come in terms of whether they're ready to do merch or not. And they don't look for the signs that I've just suggested, but instead they'll make a Facebook post or an Instagram post or a Twitter post and they'll say, hey, who would want merch here? And the issue with this is that if you've got a lot of friends and family on social media, they're going to, of course, back you up. They're going to comment on, they go, yeah, I'd love some merch. But not considering the fact that they have to pay for it, of course, because when push comes to shove, when you actually do announce the merch, you'll find out later that out of those 20 people that said they wanted to buy your merch when it comes out, are not going to buy your merch, and maybe it's just 1 or 2 people. And then now you've overestimated how much merch you really needed. And this happens more often than you think. There's tons of people that I've spoken to and they've came to me asking why their merch didn't sell. It's because that they were relying on the indications they got from their friends and family rather than the actual fan base that they actually currently have. Because if you don't have a community, no one's going to have that trust in you to actually invest into the brand. So the main takeaways I wanted to give away from this video is to just really hold out for as long as possible, build your community, and once that's up and it's flourishing and it's impacting all of your social media and your overall brand, and you're starting to see all the signs that I mentioned, that's when you should go all in and start monetizing things. Because if you do it a little bit too early and you don't end up having a good outcome with it, it's going to be noticed by a lot of people, including your own audience, and then they'll start to see that your decision to do that was a little bit premature and it's a little bit inflated. And so first impressions are everything. So we want to make things like this a really big impact. So releasing merch, for example, should be a really big part of your career. It should be a point where everything is kind of reaching a big peak. It's the same as releasing an album. It's something that you'd want to do a little bit later down the track as like a turning point in the career. Like something big is about to happen. It's a whole album. It's a really big event, right? It's the same thing with merch. It's something that you want to hold out for. So next time that you're considering about monetizing the brand in any way, look for the signs that I mentioned in this video, and it's going to give you a lot better of a direction here. That being said, if you're looking for ways on how to monetize the brand in the best way possible, you can click the link in our description. You can book in a discovery session with myself or one of the other student advisors. In terms of what I've done over the last 10 years, I've built multiple 6-figure companies in terms of music schools, music educational platforms. So if you're looking for the advice on how to actually build an artist brand and monetize it in the best way possible, I can give you all that best info. That being said, guys, I'll see you in the next video.